Good morning and welcome to HyTerra's webinar. This morning I'll be joined by CEO Riley Kemp and Executive Directors Avon, McIntyre and Ben Mee. There won't be a presentation this morning. We'll be going headstrong into the questions that we received during the week. So without further ado, Riley, I'll pose the first question to you. And many of the questions that we received were centered around this question. Why is HyTerra doing the flow testing?
Thanks, Gareth. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Look, we drilled 3 wells in 2025. We had, elevated helium and hydrogen shows in all 3 of those wells. And, the next phase, those are shows in mud gas sampling, which is great, but it doesn't show what gas can flow. So, the next stage in the process is to see what we can flow from those wells in the flow testing. So what we're going to do is enter in with, we've identified McCoy as the well to test. We can go into some more detail about why we've done that. We've identified sort of 2 zones in McCoy that are, were the most interesting from the work we'd done last year. And, we are excited to see what gas we can flow because, gas in drilling mud is great. Gas flowing to surface shows us the actual concentrations, the flow rates that we can get from the well. So, it's an important appraisal step. It gets us from exploration into sort of early stage appraisal, which is, super exciting for us. And, what it really shows is producibility from McCoy, which is exactly what we need to know for, our decision-making process going forward. And we collect data. We're continually learning, and this gives us additional data beyond our exploration data, which is the next step for us as well.
So perhaps the next question for you, Avon, you spent a lot of the time on the ground in Kansas and on the wells. Why did you choose to test McCoy and not the other wells?
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. It was a lot of thinking went into this. We chose McCoy. It's our deepest well. And it went as deep as possible as we could drill into the Precambrian basement, which was one of our objectives. And it's important to remember that people just don't drill into these rocks, and we're trying to drill into rocks that are rarely drilled into and extract gas that really is extracted. So a lot of thought went into what well, which zones, and so forth. And it was on the same structure as Roche. So one of those 2 wells would inform one of the other as well. But we chose to analyse that particular one because we thought it had the most encouragement in the drilling data that we saw to date. When we analysed all the data and integrated it all, the mud gas shows, both the drilling data, the wireline logs, and what we saw during the cleanup operations, and plus the geophysical data that we collected in the area, it made sense to test that one. And it was our first genuine greenfields well where we tested our own target hypothesized prospect.
And so what will the testing involve, Avon?
So it'll be 2 zones within the well, and they're very separate zones. They're not overlapping. There's a big gap between them. One's very, very much at the base of the well, and one is shallower, both in the Precambrian section. And they will test those 2 separate zones, and it's the normal thing. You want to see what the gas concentrations are for both hydrogen and helium, and what the composition within those enriched gases, flow rates, gas composition, pressure behaviour, and we'll also recover formation fluids to surface. While we do that, we'll be real-time gas monitoring and getting representative gas samples because we need to send them to independent laboratories for confirmation. Pressure monitoring will be happening throughout the process. We also need to understand what the water is doing. Water is the source of the hydrogen. So we need to collect water samples. The University of Colorado will be on site to take water samples as well. And we'll be collecting quite a lot of that just to make sure we understand what our water is and what it's doing. And then also this helps us to understand how we complete and do future well completion designs and tests as well. So the aim of the test really is to collect the right technical data, not all the data, you can't afford that, but collect the meaningful decision-making data to understand how the systems works and how do we optimize future wells for this sort of thing.
Okay, so I suppose jumping to the next question, which was, I suppose, best summarise most of the questions, is one for you, perhaps, Ben, is what does success look like?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. So, first of all, thanks for everyone for dialing in and following the HyTerra story. Look, success for this test is demonstrating producibility of a single well. So if I put that really simply, it's basically we want to see sustained gas flows, and then we move to the next appraisal. Now, what Avon has just gone through is that fortuitously in this well, we can test different geological concepts in this well across two zones. And both geologic concepts have running room upon success. Now, we've outlined this, I suppose, before in some of our announcements. Go back to those and how we look at maturing the understanding of hydrogen flows. So if we achieve sustained gas flows in this well, we will use this data from this well to plan the next step, which is commercial flow rates. And we know in the gas industry that there's plenty of options out there to enhance flow rates, different well designs, well type, length, size, width, and then different completion technologies, of course, out there to look at. So like Avon said, the data is really critical from this well. Can we get sustained hydrogen and or helium flow? We shouldn't forget about helium here, and how representative that gas composition is, pressures, which of those zones are prospective, and then that will give us the information to design those future wells and completions. So measurable hydrogen and helium flow is a really important next technical step, and that's probably a measure for success, Gareth, for this testing program. I mentioned helium before. It is actually particularly meaningful here because even at lower concentrations than hydrogen, and you see that, people report 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single digits. It has a better potential for being an earlier revenue source for the industry and companies like HyTerra. And then, of course, hydrogen is the longer term prize here, so which requires typical appraisal and scale up techniques.
Well, I suppose you've answered my next question, which is what comes next. So start talking gas flows. It brings me to our next question, one for you, Riley, is how is HyTerra going to monetize helium if it flows, or monetize hydrogen for that matter if it flows?
Ben mentioned, helium, it's economic at much lower percentages than hydrogen because of the value. So it is a potentially a nearer term revenue option. The helium market challenges or constraints are well documented at the moment with everything going on in the world. Happily, we are in a place, Kansas, that is one of the largest helium producers globally. So, and our initial testing showed both helium, at up to 5%, but also hydrogen. So, our longer term goal, what we think will become the larger market is the hydrogen side, but having helium coexisting is a great additional story, both from an potentially earlier revenue stream, but also an additional revenue stream. Happily the gases coexist, we think, from our initial testing in our wells. So, we can look to commercialize both. And if it's one or the other, that's also possible to do one of those. In terms of, how we commercialize it, I think for helium, the story's, it's quite simple. We're in a place that already has the infrastructure and supply of helium, and, we would target tapping into that existing supply and, aiming to sell helium at the well site immediately. For hydrogen, one thing that we've been trying, a message we've been trying to be clear on over the last sort of few months is there is already a large existing hydrogen market. It's currently serviced by, what is called grey hydrogen predominantly. And what we are trying to do, our goal is to compete on price with grey hydrogen. So, we're trying to avoid needing subsidies and mandates in order to be competitive. We think if we are competitive, at the ground, we can tap into that existing hydrogen market. And there are additional use cases coming online. Things like AI and data centers are new markets. There is heavy haul transport. All these additional markets are new markets that will increase that large existing hydrogen market. So for us to challenge, we're not concerned about the market. Our goal is, making sure we can extract the hydrogen at a competitive cost to grey hydrogen. And then we think that the market side will be solved as a result. So, I think in terms of what we would do, we are in a place in Kansas where, there's a lot of ammonia used for fertilizers. So that is one potential commercialization opportunity around us. But we think we can sell hydrogen more broadly. We have our collaboration agreement with Prometheus Hydrogen, where we hope to do a joint demonstration of hydrogen out of one of our wells, working with Prometheus, using their proprietary technology to deliver to a customer. And we think that unlocks the ability, working with Prometheus, to deliver as hydrogen rather than converting to ammonia at the gate, and to deliver it to customers that are further away than we thought might have been previously possible. So it's exciting on both sides. And, the key message for us is there is already a large existing market. So competing on price with that unlocks a market, and that market is only growing.
Because it's perhaps worth dwelling on what is grey hydrogen versus geologic hydrogen. Obviously, geologic hydrogen produced naturally by the earth, much lower costs than trying to crack it out of gas, and the energy costs involved in doing that. That's the obvious metric, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, there are two metrics. One, obviously gas, carbon intensity of grey hydrogen when split from gas is high. Our target is low. So that's one side. But in terms of pure cost, there is a cost associated. It's as gas costs rise, as we've all experienced recently, the cost of grey hydrogen also rises. We think we can be the lowest cost supply, because it can't, if we can get it extracted from the ground like we think we can, purify it relatively cost effectively, we can be lower cost supply than grey split from natural gas.
Yes, certainly lower cost. And look, it is worth reiterating the lower cost to the planet, or the lower carbon footprint for sure, certainly brings geologic hydrogen firmly into view. The next question I had for you, Riley, is why should investors pay attention now?
Yeah, look, thanks. That's a good question. The testing program that we're about to embark on is an important technical catalyst for us. So in terms of, developing our own project, our own understanding of natural hydrogen, this is the next step in that. And it starts in, 2 weeks' time. So that'll be, a large technical catalyst potentially. It'll deliver a few things for us, as Avon and Ben have spoken about. Understanding our ridge play, we're calling our ridge play, which is where our 3 wells have been drilled so far. Supporting our geological model for that play, helping to guide our future appraisal and drilling. Completion designs, and then looking at potentially early monetization opportunities for helium, and then longer term hydrogen monetization. And it'll help strengthen our position in the geologic hydrogen industry. I think we're already, we were an early mover and already seen very positively in the industry. And this is a step that keeps us at the forefront of that industry. But that's one immediate catalyst on the technical side. We have drilled on the ridge play. We have the majority of our acreage on what we call the rift play on the Nemaha Ridge. On the mid-continental rift. So it's another catalyst for us to look at what we can do on the rift. It's a different play. Additional shots on goal. We're learning every day with the testing that we're doing in labs on what we think we can do on the rift, which is exciting. But we also have other catalysts that we've talked about in our strategic plan about US and international growth. Now we are working on all of these things at the same time. It's, it keeps us very busy, but it's an exciting way for us to build a portfolio of high-graded potential projects that we can, get after in a capital responsible way, but building a pipeline of exciting opportunities. So these are all, for me, these are all exciting things for the future of HyTerra. And I think, investors will hopefully see, the upside in what we're doing.
Well, I suppose the next question I have would be for you, Ben. You in a former life, you work around the world for Shell. You've maintained many of those high level relationships and connections in different jurisdictions around the world. I suppose you're best placed to explain how should investors think about the scale of the opportunity ahead for HyTerra.
Scale is one of my most favourite topics, yeah. So thanks for bringing it up, Gareth. We, as early movers, need to build low-cost, significant top-tier positions. That's it, plain and simple, right? And that's what we've done in former lives, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. Kansas is the best start. And what we're doing is using learnings from Kansas to develop that commercially and then apply that to the US and apply that globally. Yeah, we're very well connected. That's very true. But it's also based on delivery. So the scale of the opportunity within, our first pillar is commercialization of what we've got. And there's two facets to that, right? This is well test, and then you've got the technical, the appraisal, the earnings monetization, the scale, the revenue. That all goes. That's pretty bread and butter. The second part is what Riley said. I just want to reinforce that 80% of our acreage is sitting above the rift, right? So company has already, though sometimes we don't talk about it again enough, in parallel to drilling, we proved well. We did all the geophysical, seismic and gravmagnetics to demonstrate that there are potential leads to get after in that space as well, right? So we have opportunities sitting in Kansas. Now, the learnings we've got from that have been applied already to potential leasing positions elsewhere, and that's been great. And of course, overseas, we continue to look at those top tier, but they have to be low cost. We have to have line of sight on commerciality. So we have very, very stringent portfolio lenses that we use internally beyond just the technical information to make sure we get in. Why? Because all of us have got into ventures in the past that have struggled for many above ground reasons. So to your point, Gareth, we're taking all that expertise above ground to make sure that what the shareholders get exposed to is executable, right, in a fast time frame.
Okay. There's been a number of questions received during the webinar. I'll put one to you, perhaps, Avon, a technical question. Are you able to provide an update on where things are at with GeoKiln?
Yeah, we have a great relationship with GeoKiln. The lines of communication are wide open, and in fact, we were talking with them about 12 hours ago. So we all want the same thing. We want a successful technological demonstration, and so a lot of careful thought has gone into making sure that when we do a demonstration with GeoKiln, that it is meaningful and successful. So I can't give you a time and a date and all the rest right now, but we continue to work on a almost daily basis with GeoKiln and understand what their technology can do and what rocks it's best applied for.
And I mean, certainly the ability to get it out of the ground and get it to market is something that HyTerra is concentrating on. It's part of the process, isn't it?
That's right, and it's all about getting molecules to surface. Just for avoidance of doubt, the GeoKiln are not involved with the current well test. The application technology wasn't seen to be particularly applicable to this particular well. So we're looking to future opportunities to see what can be done there.
Certainly, HyTerra is taking a very technological sort of surveying approach to what it's doing. It's looking at technologies around the world, and that's part of your DNA, isn't it? That you are looking to lead the world in hydrogen, and part of that would be leading the world in hydrogen technology.
That's correct, and that works for both below and above the ground as well. And there's a lot of lessons we can take from other industries, particularly oil and gas, where we've seen over the course of time just how relentless technology and completions and so forth can help you unlock resources that were previously thought unlocked. So why not start looking at them immediately rather than fight fires later in the future? Let's get them all on the table and see what works right now or in the immediate future.
And in terms of your US footprint, you've learned a lot. You've developed a handbook on hydrogen. What are the opportunities looking further afield in the US? More leases in view, and other territories, or other states, I should say.
Yeah, it's, well, as you alluded to, our must-haves, which is our in-house rule book for what we need to see for subsurface hydrogen opportunities. Everything has to pass through that. So it'll be driven by a combination of where the rocks yell at us and say, come and explore us, and where the above ground also makes sense to do so. There's no point in drilling in a state where you're going to have trouble with availability to drilling, or there's some problem with the above ground. There's a World Heritage Area or something like that. You have to look at these things all up right at the start to do so. But we are looking at east to west coast at all times, making sure that when we do something that it's going to be meaningful. But the focus is still on Kansas and what we can do there primarily.
Yes, certainly. That probably brings us closer to the end. I was just going to ask one more question of you, Riley, that's been received. Has the process for engaging customers already happening? You've got a huge industry around Kansas. The Air Force opportunity has been well reported. There's other helium opportunities coming into play. I can only think of SpaceX and the huge amount of helium they'll consume. Can you speak to what that commercial pathway looks like and whether customers are starting to be engaged, or potential off-takers, I should say?
So we are having discussions with potential customers. We've had, people reaching out to us, from industries where they need clean, cheap hydrogen for their businesses to be competitive. So that's been, promising. I think we've had high level discussions. We are very early stage, so there's interest in what we can do. I think before we can get into any sort of serious, meaningful offtake discussions, we need to mature our projects a little bit further. But there is definitely interest, both inbound. We are looking to engage on an outbound basis as well. But we have had a number of inbound customers looking for hydrogen. The helium. Not so much, because there's already an existing market, so we would tap into that existing market around us, and it's a much easier sort of offtake discussion because like I mentioned earlier, we think we can just hopefully sell it at the well site or close to the well site to existing suppliers who pick it up along the way. But there is a lot of interest. That is obviously a next step as we progress and have a better understanding of flow rates and commercialization timing and scale. We can start to sort of mature those discussions, but they are definitely happening.
All right, that's a good note to finish on. That covers 99% of the questions I've received. Any questions that weren't answered today, I will be working with the HyTerra board to get back to you on those questions. So all questions will be answered, if not today. So thank you for everyone's participation in HyTerra's update this morning. The recording of the webinar will be made available on our social channels as well as the website. And if any further questions, please feel free to send them through to Gareth at republicir.com.au. So that brings to a close to the webinar. Thank you, everyone. I'll pause it now.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Thanks all.